Ready to go? Cool. Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the First Exchange podcast with me, your host, Lydia Des Dolles. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined in studio today by Coach of Champions, Brendan Ingle. Welcome.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm delighted you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know I've wanted to get you on for a while.
I think haven't we done one before though? We did a Zoom, didn't we?
We done kind of like the Instagram live thing. Yeah. But it's good to have you in the flesh and in the new studio.
Yeah. We've got a bit more to talk about since that one, haven't we? So.
Well, we certainly do. You've been very busy. Congratulations.
Thank you.
New world champion.
Yeah.
Let's start. How did it feel?
Yeah, it feels good, but we've had. It might sound a bit, smug this, but we've had that many that it's not the same as it's not the same as the first one. I mean, the first one was Naseem Hamed, and I wasn't really involved with Naseem Hamed. So for me, the first one was Johnny Nelson. That was the next champion, and I can always remember when Naz left the gym, he said to Brendan, he went, "You're not going to get no more world champions, after me. I'm a gift from God." And my dad went. Looked at him and went, "You must be off your head." He says, "There'll be loads of world champions." And he went, "Who?" And he went, "Johnny Nelson." He went, "Brendan." And he actually said to my brother, went, "John, you're going to have a word with your daddies. Johnny's never going to be a world champion. He's already lost 2 world title fights. He's got no chance." And I went, "Well, we'll see, won't we?" And he did. And from that point, when you know the formula and you know what's required, it's a case of getting the right candidate who you can take on that journey, because they all get the same training. Yeah. But it's what makes it the difference is the individual, how they apply themselves to that system. So you get thousands coming in. They must have had thousands in that gym coming through. It must be 50, 60,000 kids. And you think you whittle them down and you get 6 world champions over 30 years or whatever it is. And you've got to know the system. And it's not changed much, but you've got to get the individual who can follow the plan. And some can stick close to it, some can, nail it to a T. And, it's probably testament to Brendan's system, how we set it up, that we don't get handed elite fighters. We don't come through the GB system. We don't get kids who won ABAs. They come from the ground up. They come from 10 years old. Yeah. And you develop them. And, Kid Galahad only won 1 national title. It was only what they call a CYPs, it's like a boys club title. He didn't win ABAs. He didn't win I don't know if 18 might have been senior, I'm not sure. I think it were 18 when he did it. And on the back of that, he's gone all the way to become, an IBF world champion, which is probably the most legitimate belt, because you've got to fight your mandatories. You've got to go through the rankings. You can't just get placed. You're not hanging around like with the WBA, WBC. You get your position. It don't matter who the champion is. You've got to fight the next one in line. So it's probably the most legitimate belt. And that system, it's brought through Johnny Nelson, Junior Witter, another one who never really probably won 1 national title. Kell Brook, he was a very good junior, never boxed senior. And obviously Kid Galahad. So you bring them through that system, and it's a long, long journey. And for me, it's been going on since I was 27 years old. That's 27 years ago. That's how long I've been at it. And in that time frame, Naz was already world champion. It was Johnny, Junior, Kell, Barry. Obviously, we've had other fighters come through. Billy Joe Saunders, Nicola Adams, who were trained by other people and became world champions. But the homegrown ones are the ones that we brought through from scratch.
In terms of the system, it's a very famous system. The Ingle Gym as a whole, with its legacy, is, it's built into boxing. You can't know about boxing and not know about the Ingle Gym, about yourself, about Brendan. That system that's in place, how did it formulate? Is it built on failures? Is it built on trial and error? Is it built on, one person like Naz will say, going ahead with it and then sitting back and going, right, this is the formulation that we need to take? Or how did this kind of iconic gym get its legacy, I suppose?
Well, all the things you've mentioned, it does come from trial and error. It did come from making mistakes. It did come from fighters who came into the gym. It came from all those things. But the basic system was implemented by Brendan, who was trained over in Ireland. All his family, his brothers were fighters. His dad was actually a pigeon fancier. He wasn't really into boxing, but they had some other guy training him. And when he came over to England, he had a little book with things in, the blows, so many rounds of footwork. And then he got hold of a building and started building it from there. And just by observation, because he was dyslexic. So he had to do things by vision and what worked, and gauging people. And, we've got the lines in the gym. which have been down for years. And that's a patented system now. It's been copyrighted. And, you know, the colours in it, it worked for Brendan, who was dyslexic, and probably, you know, he probably had other spectrums, learning difficulties, and dyspraxia maybe, and they saw they work better on colours and sounds and stuff like that. He was into music, rhythm of music, colours, so all the lines were painted different colours. And what you found is the kids who came into the gym with OCD or dyslexia or attention deficit disorder or whatever, these naughty kids had come in, and for 2 hours of a day they'd be normal because they'd have something to focus on. Barry was like hyperactive when he came to the gym. You'd have to, you know, 2 hours a day, an hour in the morning, 2 hours at night, and then he'd probably be calm. And if he didn't train, he was a nightmare when he was a kid. So the story is that when Barry came in, Brendan, he came in middle of the morning. Brendan said, "Do your footwork, I'll be back." And he was there for 3 hours doing the footwork. He never stopped. But most kids would do 10 minutes, think, well, he's not coming back, and do one. Yeah. You know what I mean? But Brendan kept popping back every now and again. And he said, Barry, every time I came in, we're still doing the thing, doing the lines. And that's when you've got a kid like that, you know that whatever you tell them, it's gospel. They're going to do it. They're just going to carry on doing it till you say stop. And that's what you need as a fighter. You don't need somebody thinking, well, I've done that for 10 minutes. What's next? You've got to master it. And even now, the first thing that he does when he walks in the gym is he'll do 4-6 rounds of footwork, shadow boxing footwork. It's just the start of the routine. It never leaves you.
That story, because obviously we had Barry Kid Galahad in here a couple of weeks ago for an episode of the podcast, and we spoke about that, you know, what is now an infamous story of his first day and turning up and your dad, you know, letting him in and then heading off to do whatever he needs to do. What was the premise of Brendan, your dad, doing that? Like, what was he trying to see? Was he trying to see, would he last? No, was he trying to see, would he be able to stick out the couple hours? Or what's the coaching mentality behind that?
Probably everything, but I think the main reason was what, you know, got his defences alerted were that he walked into the gym, Barry, quite innocently and said, "Oh, Naseem Hamed sent me down. He says I want to be world champion. Come here." And this was a period, maybe 2 or 3 years after Naz had left. So Brendan automatically thought he's just sent somebody in to spy on what's going off. Yeah. So instead of saying to him like, "Do one," he went, "No problem. Yeah, do this then," and had him doing it and thought, well, if that's his intention to come down and maybe infiltrate or cause havoc or whatever it is, whatever his reasons come down, he's not going to stick it this long. And I can remember him saying to me, pulling me on side and saying, "Keep an eye on this kid. I think he's come down to spy." I went, "What's it matter anyway, Dad?" And he just stuck at it. So when we go back to the previous question of all the things, what made the gym work? Yeah, you know, Naseem Hamed, you know, there's a story going around that Herrol developed the Ingle style. No, he was part of it. You know, obviously when we had fighters before him, Mick Mills, a guy called Stevie Stocks, these, you know, kids, they could stand and have a fight. That's how people did. When Herrol came, he came at 18 years old, and Brendan had been watching him on the amateur circuit. But we had very good fighters amateur. We had a kid called Peter Bennett, very good fighter. Mark Slater, Nicky Daly. People forget about these kids because they never boxed pro, but they never made the big time. And if they had, they'd have said, well, the style came from me. We had another guy called Walter Clayton. They're all on Facebook. You can look these guys up. They were the basis of the Ingle gym. You know, we used to travel up and down the motorway, at championship fights, up and down the country with these guys. You know, there's so many other fighters apart from the one, you only hear the ones that make it. So they all learned. Brian Anderson, another one who lived with Herrol at the time, he became British champion. There's so many, you know, there could be an whole episode on these ex-fighters and these former fighters. They all went on to do other stuff. One became a prison governor, you know, one went into Mark Slater was a very good amateur, went to fight in the Falklands.
Wow.
So that's how far back it goes, but people don't remember these stories.
And you know, and you're saying this, and I don't know these names.
No,
you know?
You won't. But they were very good fighters, and they all built the Ingle style. They all learnt off each other. They were, you know, classy fighters. The reason that Brendan got kicked out of the amateurs is because whereas amateur boxing was very stand up, straight, back and forward, 2 steps in straight lines, they developed a different style, more angles. They train, you know, the style he taught. Brendan looked at it and think, well, that guy's static in straight lines, let's get angles. So when he started getting good and his kids started winning championships, people just get jealous. Because everybody's doing the same thing. They're all in the ABA coaching handbook at the time, and they're all training the kids the same way. Keep your hands up, don't drop your hands, keep your hands. And Brendan said, drop your hands, do this. You know, do your footwork, step side to side. You can't do that. So when that style started beating, you know, the traditional system, everybody starts questioning what they're doing wrong. Because when them guys were boxing each other, fine.
Yeah.
But then when they get somebody totally coming in and doing something different and they're beating them guys, they can't quite get their head around it, and it kind of undermines what they've been doing for all these years.
Yeah.
So now we go back 30 years to body sparring. You know, oh, you can't win fights, championship fights, we know head sparring, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, Brendan was in a system when he boxed where guys would be head sparring from Monday to Friday and then fighting on a Saturday night. So there's a lot of damage involved. So he started a system where it was body sparring. And now, only now, in a lot of places, they're starting to implement it because of the damage it can cause. There's far more damage caused in sparring sessions in gyms than there is in fights. You might, as a top level athlete, you might fight 3 times a year, 12 rounds. But if you're doing 140 rounds of sparring for each fight, it's like you're having it's so much damage. So, you know, that's creates longevity in boxing. You look at people like Johnny Nelson, you wouldn't even think he was a boxer. Yeah. Even Naseem Hamed to a certain degree. And Naseem Hamed, probably in his entire career in the Ingle gym, probably did maybe 20 rounds of open sparring, if that. And that's from being a kid all the way up. And people say that's impossible for the level he fought at and what he did. Well, it's not really if you know what you're doing. Yeah. But so many people don't. So, you know, the Kid Galahad story, Barry, when he came into the gym, it was purely, you know, to keep him on his toes and see if he could stick the process, because he didn't box. He played football. And he told me when he was over in Liverpool, he had a guy mentoring him, and Barry kept saying, I want to be a footballer. I went, no. And then he told the guy he was moving to Sheffield, he said, what you want to be is a boxer. Fine, you know, you get to this gym. He went from football to boxing, and that's where he's become. But it's took a long time, you know, from 13 years old to 31. It's a long time to get where you need to be. And it won't pay off for him until maybe he's had, you know, 3, 4, 5 defences. It will probably be worth it. But just to have that belt on the mantelpiece, said, well, I set my mind on this. Yeah. And I've got there, I've achieved it. You know, that's a good thing. And then it's now about monetising it.
For someone like Barry, can you remember the moment where you looked at him and said, he's going to be a world champion?
I don't think you can ever do that, because, you know, you can see there's so many kids who come into that gym and look like they can be world champions at 7, 8 years old. Just when Naz came in, it wasn't just Naz stood out. There was lots of guys who stood out. And same when Kell Brook came in, you know, he was the worst of a bunch of 5 or 6 kids. They were all very good, but he was the worst of them. But he stuck at it because his parents brought him down. Same with Naz, he only had to walk down the road. There was 9 in his family, I think. So for him to come to the gym and have attention off the gym, or Brendan in particular, whereas his attention from his parents was diluted. It was fantastic. So obviously he's going to spend time in a place where he's getting, this is Naseem Hamed, he's sparring Herrol Graham. And there's pictures of Herrol Graham sparring with Naz. And how Naz learnt it was that Herrol Graham was the man coming through. He'd move out of the way, Naz would try and hit in the face. That's where Naz got the jumping from, jumping up to Herrol Graham to try and hit him on the chin. So people say, how did he develop that leap shot? Well, they were doing it at 8 and 9 years old. You know, that's how they did it. So the guys coming through, when you're saying, can you spot them? You can see the potential, but the pitfalls, and the biggest pitfalls, are generally the parents.
Why is that?
Football dads, football moms, because they know better. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. They've all got the best intentions for the kids, and they're all experts. Yeah. But you've got to be able to take a step back. You know, I don't agree with, you know, parents training the kids unless they're established trainers beforehand. You know, I boxed as an amateur, and although my dad did a little bit of training, it was somebody else training me. You know what I mean? But that was, I got the system. The guy who trained me said, that's the system, do that. So, and I don't think I want my dad training me as well. I didn't really want that relationship. But I got that relationship later on when I became a trainer second, because obviously he was mentoring me in that sense. He didn't mentor me as a boxer. Yeah. He mentored me as a coach and a trainer.
Why do you not think the relationship between father and son or father and daughter might not work?
I just think there's too many emotions involved. You've got to be detached a little bit. You've got to be able to stand back. And, you know, even when the Kell Brooks, the Kid Galahad, you've got that connection with them, but you've got to know when's enough and when's too much. Yeah. And that's not always good as a parent. You know what I mean? I've seen parents leave the kids in there getting battered. Yeah. And then I've seen parents pulling the kids out too soon. So it's that balance in it. They either get it wrong, or right, or really wrong. And I've been in fights with kids, and parents have been saying to me, pull them out, or don't pull them out. And it doesn't make no difference to me, because I'm not going to take their advice. I'm going to use my experience and do it that way, because I'm in the best position, aren't I? I've been doing it for a long, long time. See, we've got social media, and people think that boxing trainers only go far back as social media went, because that's when they started getting an insight into it. So look at the old school trainers. You probably couldn't name any.
No.
You know what I mean? Jimmy Tibbs.
Jimmy would know, but it's through Mark that you kind of learn about
course,
Jimmy.
People would think that Mark Tibbs was the trainer, when really it's his dad. Same with Jimmy McDonald. You go back there, not Shane McGuigan, because his dad didn't really train anybody, Barry didn't train anybody. But you go way back to these trainers, who were around back in the day. Ronnie Davis, who trained Eubank Jr. Who trained Eubank Jr. and Chris Eubank. You know what I mean? You go back to all them trainers, like people, who were they then? Terry Lawless. Back in the day, bringing champions through, on a conveyor belt. But people can't remember that far back, maybe 10 years. So, luckily I've been at it since I was born into boxing. Every day I woke up, I was doing something. My first experience with Herrol Graham is I woke up, I looked across, and he was in a bed across from me. That was it. Because he'd been out boxing one night, they come back late, and he just stayed in the house. So he lived with us for 2 or 3 years, but he was under Brendan's watchful eye, because he realised he got a kid with plenty of potential. But what was going to probably unravel him is being left to his own devices. And we used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go for a run. And this is in the times when you had to weigh on the day for a fight. So if you were a championship fight, you would weigh in at 12 o'clock that day, and you'd fight 10 o'clock that night. That's how it worked. And I can remember Brendan saying to me, come on, get out of bed, you're going to have to run with him. We'd have to run twice a day, 10 miles it was. And
10 mile twice a day?
So no, we'd run 6 miles in the morning, 4 miles at night. 2 circuits we used to do 5 days a week. And that's what you had to do to keep on your weight. But it wasn't fast running, it was fat burning running, it was conditioning running, it was just fitness running. It wasn't like you see S&C coaches now making people sprint, do all these kind of things. Because Brendan worked it out for himself. We had a system where we did the nearest thing you can do to boxing, which is spar, body sparring. You do a bit of pad work, you do footwork, you do long runs for fat burning. We did sprints, and we had a circuit system. So it was all in place to cover all aspects of, what a boxer needs. And that's why sometimes when I look at the stuff that's going on with S&C now, that, and people making a big play for it and making up the training 50% of it, you have to look and think, well, where was it 20 years ago? Where was it with the likes of Thomas Hearns, Sugar Ray? They didn't do it. They didn't even do pad work. So, and you had some great Marvin Hagler. You never saw Marvin Hagler lifting a weight. Because they did boxing training. They used the things in the gym to get them where they needed to be. So, looking back, so we had to go to running, and he'd send me out on a run, and it'd be, don't matter anywhere. Most of the time it was the winter, because the boxing season usually ran from September to about April. Amateurs or pro, basically not much going off in the summer. So most of the mornings and nights were dark when you were running, and we used to run. And one day I got up, I said to Brendan, my dad, why am I having to run with him? It's like, he can do it on himself. I think he's in fact, it was his birthday yesterday, Herrol. He was 62. And he was 8 years older than me. So when he was 20, I was about 12. So I had to go running with him. And I said to Brendan, why do I have to go running with him? He goes, it's between me and you, don't say anything to me, scared of the dark. I thought it was a bit strange. So we're in bed, and he'd always make me turn the light off when I get into bed. I says, that's why he makes you turn the light off. So I'm laid in bed one night, I said to him, why do you always make me turn the light off? He goes, because I don't want to get in and out of bed. He says, you can do it. I says, are you scared at dark? He went, no. I went, are you sure? He went, yeah. I said, I don't believe you. He said, I'm not scared at dark. So we did a few more runs, and I said to him, Dad, he's not scared at dark. He says, yeah, he is. So one night I says, you switch the light off. He went, all right then. So he switched the light off, and I then realised he weren't scared at dark. So I said to me, Dad, why have you told me he's scared at dark? He went, listen. He goes, you've got to go running with him to make sure he does the run. He says, and if I tell you, that's for that reason, you're not going to do it. But you think it's funny because you're a kid and he's older than you and he's scared of the dark. So you can keep an eye on what he does. Because we didn't have heart rate monitors, we didn't have tracking devices. But my dad needed to know, he was too old to do the running, but he needs somebody with him to make sure that he did the runs. And he did do the runs. He was very competitive. People used to think it was called Bomber because, he bombed people out. He didn't, because he could run. So that's what we used to do. We used to run twice a day, and that was a tracking device back in them days. There was always somebody watching him. If it was Brendan in the gym, my mother in the house who fed him, and us training him. So there was somebody keeping a tabs on him all the time. Couldn't really escape anywhere. So you had to keep him locked down. And that's how it works with fighters sometimes, because most of them, you let them out of the sight for 2 minutes, you don't know what they're doing. Once they leave the gym, you don't know what they're doing. And you need to know what they're doing, because when they're in a tough fight, you need to know that they've done the weight right, they've done the training right, they've done the rest right. And they can be telling you all these things, but once they leave the gym, you don't know what they're doing unless you've got them on a training camp and locked down.
The athlete is a very interesting character.
Sorry?
The athlete is an interesting character. You know, when you...
The athlete. Yeah. I'm actually thinking what I'm actually saying. The athlete. It's like I talk to my kids.
Sorry, my apologies. I get my translator.
When I talk to my kids, we do a bit of a, because we have to talk about my dad. And we do one when we go 1, 2, 3. And that's the thing. And they start laughing. And I say, how does Granddad say 3? And they go 3. I said, but what does he call the tree? And they say tree. You know what I mean? So we have a bit of a laughing joke. So sometimes when you listen to him, it's like, what are you saying?
Well, I have been told that, working, in TV or media, that I have to start getting rid of my trees. Yeah. My 300 and my trees. But a lot of people find that very funny. People will say, what time is it? At like 10 to 3?
10 to 3. And
10 to 3.
We just on that same subject, I was off to America one time with Jason Quigley. And
he's got an interesting accent as well, right?
Can't quite make it out. And I said to him, are you actually from, obviously where he's from, I believe he's on the border of Northern Ireland, so it's very, very strong. And we got to the check-in, and he said he spoke to the lady behind the counter about his tickets, and she just looked puzzled, and he said it again, and she looked at me and I went, Jason, she don't understand you. So I said it. She goes, yeah, I don't understand you. So he looked, and said, what do you mean you don't understand me? So it's, he couldn't quite understand why she was looking puzzled. So yeah, we've had that a few times, but yeah. The athlete is a very interesting person, yeah. Yeah,
the mind, the mind of the athlete, or the mind of the fighter, for me personally, it's my most fascinating area. It's trying to understand the person that has put themselves in the position to want to be the best in their particular fields, and it's probably a fascination with, people who want to be the best and who strive to be the best and who end up being the best. And what does it take to get there? Especially in terms of being a fighter or being, an elite level fighter, in that, what is it inside them that will drive them to want to be the best?
Usually it's an insecurity thing that the good fighters tend to be kids who you'll not get a kid who's good at school being a boxer. Back in the day we had a guy called Nicky Piper, and he was always, the thing about him is always got a university degree or something like that. And there all been fighters in the past who've been educated, but you tend to find that certain people are cut out for certain things, and all the good fighters we've had, they've been, to quote a promoter, Frank Maloney, they've got to have a screw loose, and that's not a bad thing. It's just they just look at things a bit of a different way, and they've got the will to win. And don't forget, as a fighter, you've just got to beat the guy in front of you. Now that might sound like, well, just the guy in front of you, but you've got a marker. You can physically gauge somebody up and down, work them out, realize where you can make them crack. And it's that kind of, it's like a game of chess with elite level fighters anyway, and watching behavior of fighters, and basically just don't like losing at anything.
That's the bit. That's the bit. They don't like losing.
They don't like losing, whatever it is. Naseem Hamed was a very good boxer. He used to pal up with the snooker players back in the day. Stephen Henry. He used to play them at snooker. Everything he put his hand to, he wanted to be the best at. Yeah. And if you beat him, he'd keep you on that table or whatever else you were doing until he beat you.
Yeah.
And I always remember one time I was training with him. We were staying in his house when he got this big house in Sheffield, and we went running. He didn't like running, but he had to run for this fight because he had to lose weight. But he never ran for most of his fights. Only probably towards the back end of his career when I got involved with him. And we're running up this hill, and he starts picking up the pace. So I just got in front of him, and a bus came past with everybody piked. This bus came past, it was piked, and everybody's looking down, and he's behind me saying, "Dominick, get behind me." everybody on buses looking. I went, no, you get in front of me. No, you need to run behind me. I went, no, you get in front of me if you want to be in front. You know what I mean? So he'd edge up, I'd let him get behind me, and I keep it, and then he'd try to go past me, and I just pick the pace up, and it frustrated him. And he was concerned about people on the bus thinking somebody's beating him at running.
Yes.
And then for the last 50 meters, he tried to out-sprint me, but I was a very good runner, and he couldn't. And he expected me to let him, to let me beat him, but I won't do that. Doesn't matter who he was. If he wants to beat me, he's got to beat me. And it's the same when they got in the ring. Whenever they sparred, it was body sparring, but body sparring when Naz was brutal. And whoever got in that ring, it doesn't matter whether you were a 15-year-old kid, what size, whatever you were, their main aim was to bash you that bad that you got out. But it's only body sparring, so you could never say, well, he was taking the piss, hitting me in the face. He didn't. But body sparring is brutal if you know what you're doing. And the trick in them days is there'd be a ring full, maybe 10 in the ring. And it was a case of breaking people down. The one who tend to stick the most with Naz would try and finish them. They get out. Then he'd get onto somebody else and he'd try and be the last man standing. That's what the game was. And that's where the competition came from. He would try and outlast everybody. He used to go down to the baths and they'd have a competition who could stay under the water the longest, hold the breath. You know what I mean? All that, whatever, chucking coins, flipping coins. It was so competitive. And when that competitiveness leaves them is when they've had enough. Yeah. And basically, when you talk to Naz about the Barrera, he says, I just lost interest. It wasn't fun anymore. It was hard work. And, he had one more fight after that and it was shocking. You would look at him and think, how's he ever been a world champion? And it's when that desire, goes.
Oh, it's so interesting that, if you're looking at the context of life, we'll say, as the person, that version of Naz or that person who's saying, get behind me or being that competitive may not be the most pleasant person to be around in terms of like human to human, but in the context of needing to be like that to be the best, you have to be.
You have to be that way. You have to believe that, you're the best thing since sliced bread and they do in their own mind. They think they walk on water. And
so how is that in the context of the gym then? How do you as the coach navigate all these guys or girls?
It's ego, isn't it? It's ego at the end of the day, and you've got to know how to manage ego. And there's times, people, you get a lot in boxing where you'll hear somebody saying, they need putting in the place, but that's not really what you need to do. It's like I've had kids come to my gym sparring, and trainers afterwards, he needed that, he needed putting in his place. But no, they don't actually, because it's that belief, that total belief that nobody's better than them. And that's the thing with Naz. We never got into fights with Naz when we took him out for fights thinking we'd get beat, because you just knew how he was. You never worried about thinking, he's going to get beat. The only time you had your doubts is when he boxed Kevin Kelly, because he got put down a few times. But even getting put down, you never saw Naz once you never saw a look on his face thinking, I'm in too deep here, I'm going to get beat. He was like, all right, then you've had me, good. No problem. And I think he went down maybe twice before Naz clipped him. But Naz had such confidence that he had the power to turn a fight around with one shot. He went, no problem, I've been down then. And we'll get going. It was a 4-round shootout. Yeah. So, and then Naz finished him off and Naz was like, well, there you go, I've got you. You might have had me down twice, but I'm going to finish this. And that's how Naz was. Yeah. So you always had that, but he had so much belief in himself and you had so much belief in him that you were never holding your breath through fights. You thought, it's going to end. It's only going to end one way, this, and that's Naz winning. Yeah. Obviously, it didn't work with Barrera, but then we weren't training him. So,
when you look at yourself and the role that you play within the gym, how have you learned or navigated the role as coach? Like, has it been a case of, failing, making your mistakes? Like, how do you learn to curate all of these different fighters and know what each of them all need? Like, I imagine that's a very difficult role, even if you look at the context of an office with different personalities and strong characters. And how do you sit on top of them and sort of navigate them all to achieve?
Well, I could ask you this question and I think the answer is going to be no. You ain't got any children, have you?
No.
Why not?
Because I'm doing this, I'm busy doing this. Right. One day. So
you might have children. Yes, so that's the thing that I used to think kids with hard work. So obviously I came from a family of 5 and we didn't really get on. Everybody was, because we were the Irish family, weren't we? My dad was a Catholic. And so when we went to school, most people had a brother and a sister. Yeah. It was only people like, not there was many Asians or whatever, but it were the Irish or sometimes Jehovah's Witnesses for some reason. They were like big families, like 5 kids plus. So there was only a few families in my school that had like more than 2 kids. Very rare. Yeah. So families are hard work and kids are hard work. And my dad spent a lot of time in the gym, and if we wanted him, we'd go over. That's where we found him. So when you're in that environment and you realise and watch how Brendan handled that situation, you just it's an automatic thing. You just learn. You stand there listening to him talking to groups of people, and it comes as second nature. You don't realise it. I never realised at that age. You never said to me, "You're going to be a boxing trainer. You're going to be a boxer." You just said, "Do what you want to do." That's what I did. When I left home at 18, I jumped on a boat, came to Sheffield and worked, and then did what I wanted to do. Away from my parents. He said, "You'll do the same thing." So you're learning subliminally. You're watching everything. And it's just going in. You don't realise you're doing it, and you're just watching how he dealt with people and how people dealt with him and how people dealt with each other. And you're just learning about people. So when you say, "How do you manage it all?" I can't really say how I manage it because it's just second nature to me now. You have to make sure you've got the right people in the first place, that they've all got the common goal of wanting to be good and they're all going to work together. And I won't have kids in the gym who cause disruption. You can see them coming in and they don't last long because the system doesn't work for them. They go. So it's a natural selection process anyway. Sometimes you have to keep people away, but it's just knowing what to do with that particular person. Like Liam Williams likes to do things a certain way. And it's like when people used to come to the gym, you get two types of people. People come and wanted to box like Naseem Hamed, how Naseem Hamed was in his prime, but that's not how he started out boxing. He developed to that style. And before you develop to that style, you've got to start with the basics, the footwork, the technical stuff, the standard boxing stuff, and then you develop your style. They think you're going to turn them into a junior witter, a switch hitter, you're going to make them switch and all these things, and that's not the case. You look at the fight, a good trainer will look, no matter what our system is, a good trainer will look at the fight and think, what does he need to improve? So Liam Williams, when he came to my gym, he was already a good fighter. So he can switch, and I train him to switch, but he doesn't, I don't insist he fights to switch. It's just another addition. It's just an addition to his arsenal. And he became a more disciplined fighter under our system because he was actually training too hard, too much when he was in Wales. He was training and he was the top guy in the gym. So he had nobody to compare against. And he came up to our gym to spar Kell Brook for the Golovkin fight. And you could see him thinking, this is a bit different. And he wasn't the top kid. And he gave Kell a good spar. And then years later he came. And he said to me, I should have come a lot earlier. I said, but you weren't ready to come a lot earlier. You weren't ready for that change because it's not just a case of driving up. You've got to be mentally prepared to leave where you are to improve, and not many people can do that, and that's why not many people who are good get past a certain level. So the fighters we've had have been good, like Junior Witter. He came from Bradford and lived in Sheffield. We had another guy called Isham Pickering, came from Newark. So a lot of fighters we've had have come from outside of Sheffield and totally moved there. So when you look at that system of kids, that it's tricky. You just manage them. Automatically, and you just have to know what makes them tick. You have to be you've got to be very aware of how they are as people. You have to spend time. You have to go for a coffee with them. You have to chat them up. You have to learn about them, and they don't know off at time what you're doing. But you're basically just gauging what the personality is. But the thing is with boxers, as with most people with this ego, what you're seeing is the front wall of them, because that's what they want to show you.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Do you find that most of them are quite guarded?
Of course they are, because because the boxers.
Yeah.
You know, Billy Joe Saunders is the most charming person on this planet.
Yeah. You
know, you listen to him. I don't know if you've interviewed him. Fantastic. I mean, it's great talking to Billy. He charmed the birds out of the trees. and then he'll beat you up. And that's what he'll do. And as used to be the same. He'd talk to the opponents. You know, you're fantastic. And they'd be like, I'm going to knock you out. And they'd be like, what? So that's the thing. You never got past. You never really get past them, and you don't want to, but you know there's something there. And I think if they learnt to work themselves out, they wouldn't be the people who they were. If they realised what made them tick, or what the faults were, or what their life was like. You know, look at most boxers, like the good ones, Mike Tyson, even Evander Holyfield at the weekend. What's he thinking at 58 coming back? Yeah. So. What's the mindset? If you can't work them out, you can only gauge on the behaviour, what they do in the training, and try and stop them from unravelling or going off the rails and keeping them on track. And it's guiding, it's controlling that aggression, the determination, their ego, and just manipulating it so they keep on just between the rails while they've got the career. Yeah. And most fighters, after they finish, if they're smart, you look at people like Anthony Croll, who's gone into training great. Ricky, who's obviously had his problems. He trains people. They've got to have something to focus on, because the ones who don't, they go to the wall because they've been told what to do every day. They've had a system. It's easy. But when they have to get up and think for themselves, it can be difficult. So, after boxing, with boxers, they've got to, it's a bit precarious, really. A lot of them do fall by the wayside in a bad way. So they've got to have something in place for when the career finishes to take up that space and time what they were using, for remaining focused and disciplined.
It's interesting because if we look, not only even, with boxers, but athletes in general, in particular footballers, you see the same sort of pattern emerge with like ex-footballers, that have had this lifestyle. And again, it's fascinating because, it's no surprise that history repeats itself. And you hit the nail on the head there with that. What my question was going to be was, why do you think that happens? And it's obviously because, like that, they've been given a schedule, they're being told what to do, they don't have to think for themselves, and then they're just free to be, and they have all this money and success and power and different things like that. And I imagine that changes a person.
Yeah, it does, but I think you've got to understand that, footballers from an early age, boxers from an early age, even in music with bands, you have a tour manager or a road manager, whatever. You've got the talent, you know what you're doing, but there's got to be somebody to guide you.
Yeah.
There's always, nobody wakes up a fantastic boxer, footballer, musician. They've got something. People we experience guide them and mold them. I can always remember Naseem Hamed's business manager, who was his brother at the time, Riaf, saying to me, Dad, you've brainwashed our Naz. He went, yeah, I have. Yeah, from 7 years old, when I sit down and think what you've done, you've brainwashed him. Yeah, because I brainwashed him to be a world champion and make millions. That's what That's what it is.
What did he mean you've brainwashed him? Like to think a certain way?
Yeah, of course he did. Because he used to say to Naz, he used to take Naz around at 7 years old when he'd been boxing a year, 7, 8 years old, and say, everybody's going to be world champion, this kid. And like, that's fantastic. So he'd take him all around the boxing shows. Naz was in changing rooms for world title fights when he was 10 and 11 years old. So when I first boxed amateur, all right, I'd done that anyway, but a lot of kids, the first experience they have, they walk in the gym, they train, they have a fight. But they don't know where it's going to go, this. They don't know what the end route is. I went to school, I played football, I was quite good at football, and my school football, Sunday league football, that was it. I didn't think, oh, well, what do you do now? Do you go to like county team? Do you do this? Do you get trials? Because my dad weren't interested in football.
Yeah.
So there was nobody to guide me. Not that I would have been a footballer anyway. But I was good at most things. I was quite sporty in all ways because I was fit. But it was staring me in the face what I should have done. I should have been into boxing at some point because I was brought up around it.
Yeah.
And so I've actually lost my point now. What were we talking about?
We're talking about the athlete that's guided
right,
for so long, and then afterwards you're just like
from
left
an early age.
Your
from
own
an early
devices.
age, they've got somebody telling them every day.
Yeah.
Eat this, do this, run, body work. You've got somebody. You don't have to think for themselves. All you've got to do is go in and perform. Win, right? You've done your bit. You've won.
Yeah.
You've won. Start back again. So then, when a camp finishes, there's nobody telling them what to do. All that system and what's in place. It's like kids going to school. You accept you have to get up at 8 o'clock. You go to school. You learn. You come home. You have your tea. You do your own work. You watch TV. You've got a system in place. Then I can remember leaving school and thinking, it's like, somebody's put me on this high board here and told me to jump, and I don't actually know what I'm going to do now because that's what I thought. But I didn't realise. I thought, well, like I ain't got to, I left school and I finished my paper round on a Friday and I was working on a Monday.
Yeah.
In a relative's factory. It was just a temporary thing what lasted a year, and that made me mind up. I didn't want to work. I didn't want to have that kind of job. But I can remember being there thinking, well, if that's it now, I've done all this, what am I going to do? Because I didn't plan to go to university. I didn't plan any of these things. Just thought, well, I'll just freewheel it. And luckily, I've never worked a day in my life since. So, but I got into boxing, I got into sports, I knew about nutrition and training, and it's worked out for me. You know what I mean? That's all I've done for the last, 30 years or so. So, but these kids, they've had something in, bringing them along. They've had somebody dedicated to them. And in that case, it was Brendan. And he didn't just do it for these, one person. He did it for a group of people. It was natural selection then. The Nazes, the Ryan Rhodes, the Johnny Nelsons. They were the kids who just stepped out of that group. They listened more. Brendan would say, right, who's going to come out and sweep the street? Most kids would think, I'm not doing that, and they'd be off. And you'd have 10, 15 kids, 3 would hang about, and he'd be sweeping. But they'd hang around because they'd be sweeping the streets, and then Brendan would be talking to them, and they'd be educating themselves. Yeah. And then he said to Johnny Nelson, get up and sing a song, get up and tell a story. And he'd be like, oh, Brendan. Embarrassed, but look, what's he doing? He's on TV. And he had no formal training, but he goes, I would never have the confidence to stand up and do that. Yeah. But I started doing it in front of kids. And he says, and found my confidence. So Brendan kind of extracted like a magnet. The people stuck to him, and the ones who saw no sense in it or no value in it just went off and did their own thing.
Yeah.
And they didn't. We've never had a kid in our gym who didn't listen to Brendan 100% and didn't train properly. They've been the champions. We've had plenty who've done it who haven't, achieved that. But we've never had anybody who went totally wrong way and became a champion. It doesn't happen. You've got to follow the system and to get the success. So keep them on the rails, show them the guidelines. But all of a sudden, then when the fame and the money disappears, everybody steps back, and this kid start there. Well, look, yesterday, how was this?
Yes.
When Kilbrook got beat by, I think it was Gloucester Herrol Spence, my phone went from pinging when I was winning, when I beat Sean Porter, thousands of people I've never heard of, numbers what were coming up, what I didn't have no names attached to. He says, and when I got beat, he goes, I can count on one hand how many people messaged me. He says, everybody loves a winner. He says, that's the reality of it.
Like who's ringing? Who's ringing Kelbrook? Because they all say this, as soon as you lose, Anne Crawley said it last week, as soon as you lose, the phone stops ringing. And it's like, who was ringing in the first place? Who's ringing Kelbrook,
But the thing is, you have your group of friends, and then you'll have somebody who's...
The hangers-on.
The hangers-on, the people, they all get the fame touch, as I used to say. You get all these people, have you got his number? People, I get the same when, people message me, oh, thanks, whatever. Yeah. But my dad who said to me, look, Dominic, when you're winning, everybody wants to know you, and when you're losing, nobody wants to know. Just treat everybody, just be the same. It doesn't matter. Don't let it affect you. It's like winning's winning and losing. Just get on. And the thing is, get back into the gym the next day. Why was Kid Galahad on a treadmill the day after winning, getting beat by Josh Warrington in Leeds? Well, because that's what the system will get back on. I've got that was yesterday. What am I doing today? I'm running. Same when he won. Well, he's won. What's he doing that for? He could be like swanning. He came in. He had some food. He went to bed. He messaged me and he went at something like 5:30. What are you doing? I'm in bed. I need to get up and do a run. Are you coming down to the gym? So down into hotel or whatever he's doing, he's training again. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, that was yesterday. It's what's happening today, and that's the system. So, people don't get carried away with people. Your goal is your goal. People are either going to like it or they're not going to like it, and you can't please everybody. And there's so many faceless people. It's like this social media thing and mental health and, responding to people who are having a go at you. So before we had social media, it's school ground stuff people were talking about. Oh, he said this about you. They've said, who cares?
It was just happening offline.
It just happened offline. It's never been any different. So I saw a video the other day. Somebody sent it me because it was supposed to involve a kid who came to our gym. And I looked at it and they were fighting and this kid's on phone. Somebody's kicking him in the head. And it's disgusting. Putting that on Facebook. Kids. Who's educating these kids? Who's telling, really, they shouldn't have phones in schools. Why are they allowing this? But it's too PC now. We can't do that. Oh, we can't take the phones off them. Because parents will come up, but he took his phone off. Because parents, when I were a kid, if you did something wrong at school, you got a scotch and do what teacher tells you. Now it's like, you can't talk to my kid like that. Where's there ever going to be any discipline? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Where's there going to be any discipline? So that's why we've got all this kind of stuff. That's why we've got mental health issues, because people are allowed to get away with it instead of having a system in place saying, no, that's not right. You don't bring your phones into school. There was a time when mobile phones first came out, you had to put them in a locker. You couldn't have it till you have it walking into school and walking out, and that was it. And now I'm not sending my kids to school if I can't have the phone. It's like, they don't what they need a phone for. I didn't have a phone. Yeah. We had dial-up. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I'll see you at 7:30. So if we manage to get to that point, why on earth do we need all this? And it's like, at some point it's going to implode, innit? Yes. At some point it's all going to blow up. So luckily, we kids, that our gym's the same. It's always been the same system. Like, you can walk in our gym. There's no appointment needed. The door's left open most of the time. Maybe I'm going to say this, we're going to get robbed. It's never really locked, only at night time. Yeah. But nobody's ever been in and burgled the gym. People can walk in. Oh, I see social media. Oh, I walked in your gym today. Nobody arrived. Took a few photos, and it was great to see it. And I'm off. But that's it. Yeah, if you're gonna nick a pair of stinky boxing gloves, fair enough. There's nothing to steal. Yeah. And people will come in, and that's the way it is, because that's how respected the gym is. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. People walk in and out. Oh, it's Brendan's gym, and that's it. So it's the same. Kids can come in at any level. They can meet Kilbrook, Kid Galahad, Naseem Hamed, whatever it is. Where can you do that? You can't walk into Manchester United or Manchester City or Liverpool and do that. And it's open access. And that's how the people like Naz came through. Herrol Graham brought him through. Naseem Hamed motivated Kel and influenced Kel and Kid Galahad. And same, all the way down the line. It's them figures. But somebody's got to piece it all together. And the person who pieced it all together was Brendan. You know, he gave the kids confidence. So we're talking about Naz. Where did Naz get it from? And brainwashing. We've gone a long way around here. That, you know, Naz was, well, yeah, I'm going to be world champion. He got it in his mind. But Brendan said that to 7 or 8 people. And they didn't become world champions. But Naseem Hamed took it on board and lived that life. And I remember my brother used to train him when he was 12 and 13, and they'd do some body sparring on a Sunday afternoon with my brother John, Ryan Rhodes, Naseem Hamed, one or two others. And John would say, I'm going to be Marvin Agler today. And he said, well, you're going to be Naz, because they'd have to introduce themselves. So they come in and John would say, I'm Marvin Agler. And Naz would come in, Naseem Hamed. He'd be himself. He never wanted to be anybody else. He didn't want to be Muhammad Ali. So they wanted to be, I'm going to be the world champion. You'd be like, look, and people thinking he's never going to be world champion. He's too small. But he had that total belief, you know what I mean, in everything he did. And because he was managed and trained and maneuvered in the right way, then he did it. But he was, you know, you could say that Herrol Graham failed. There were several people who failed who really should have become world. I mean, they say Herrol Graham was the best fighter never to become world champion, but that wasn't because of his ability. Because he was fantastic. He run rings around Mike McCallum. He was running rings around Julian Jackson. He got caught. It's just lifestyle outside of the ring what caught up with him. Yeah. And that can be the difference in a fight. You can have 2 very good fighters, but the lifestyle is what catches them up. And Naz learnt off Herrol, and that's the system how it worked. They brought each other on. They learnt a bit. Naz learnt a bit of everything. And Brendan didn't have his first world champion until he was 55. Yeah. And I'm 54. So I'd hate to think that I'd have to wait to this age. And it's funny because you could say, but it's not true. You could say that the one from 13-year-old with Kid Galahad, and you brought him all the way through and you're 54, and that's your first world champion. Well, it is. But I've worked with so many coming through, obviously a lot of Brendan's influence, and I'd never take credit for that because it don't really matter who's done it. The thing is, there's never going to be another Brendan Ingle. There's never going to be another Naseem Hamed. There's never going to be another Herrol Graham. I don't want to be another Brendan Ingle. I'm carrying on a system that was given to me to maintain and stick with. And I won't change it to put my own style into it. There's a little bit things being brought into it to improve it and things taken out. But the basic system that was, 40 years old is the same. Yeah. It's got little bits added on, you know what I mean? And that's about it. But it's the same thing. It's the same principles what you build it on. We don't use pipes, and we don't use paddles, and we don't use all this fancy stuff because you don't need to, because fighting is just 2 people in each other. Yeah. And you can elaborate it as much as you want, and you can dress it up as much as you want, and you can have people coming in, this special pad man, this special S&C coach. It's a load of rubbish. It's a load of rubbish because fighting is a basic desire, need, or whatever it is, or an expression. It's just violent. And but the thing is with fighters, they can step back afterwards, hug each other and say that, well done. So, that's how boxing's evolved in our gym with the fighters. And, we've had success over a long period of time. It's not a fad. It's not something what's just blown up. Yeah. And it's lasted, you might get fighters, David A, for example, was very good in his time with Adam Booth. That's probably Adam Booth's best fighter. Billy Graham is known for Ricky Hatton. Yeah. That's the best fighter he had. And what a great job, what a great combination they were. And he never boxed. Ricky Hatton never boxed as well as he did for Billy Graham, because Billy Graham knew him inside out. And that's what you need. Even though Mayweather Senior trained him, who was a fantastic, top elite level trainer, he was no good for Ricky Hatton. Yeah. Freddie Roach was a bit of a journeyman as a boxer. But look what a great trainer he turned out to be with several fighters. Most notably Manny Pacquiao. So if you can have that relationship with one fighter in your career, make them very successful. Emmanuel Stewart, look at the fighters he had. Yeah. Thomas Hearns, all the Kronk stable. Lennox Lewis I can remember Lennox Lewis boxing before he went to Manny Stewart. He was all over the place. He was a good fighter, but his style it's just not nice to watch. He didn't really know what he was doing, but Emmanuel Stewart pulled him in, tidied him up, and made his shots tighter, gave him an idea what he was doing. And he boxed. I was a timekeeper for one of his fights in Hull. Wow. And he boxed a guy called Steve Garber from Bradford. And I remember looking up at this Lennox Lewis. He was massive. His back was above the ropes. And I think I was 18 at the time. I thought, he's massive, this kid. And this kid came out fronting him up. And Lennox Lewis just lined him up. He was all over the place. And he eventually stopped him. I thought, he's a big guy, but he don't look like he knows what he's doing. Then he went to Emmanuel Stewart. And he just gave him the basics, get your jab working, right hand, slash your right hand, be accurate. And he was very good. He'd already got it, but he didn't really know what he was doing. He was trying to do a bit of everything until Emmanuel Stewart said, no, just keep it dead simple. And that's where it is. And that's all it takes sometimes with trainers. That's what a good trainer is. Nobody's going to show you a magic combination, a special technique, make you super fit. There's no such thing. It's looking at the guy who you've got in front of you and thinking, how can I improve, make him better? Make him better. Don't learn him stuff he can't do. You know, don't learn him to switch. He's not going to be a Naseem Hamed. He's not going to be a Johnny Nelson. He is who he is. Develop him how he needs to be developed. And Liam Williams has not changed from what he was. Instead of just having a tear up and a scrap and going in head first, he's just tidied himself up a little bit. Look at the fights. Look at Chris Eubank Jr. where he's been. He'll go to Roy Jones. He'll fight a bit like Roy Jones. He'll go with somebody. He'll fight a bit like him. You don't know what his style is.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And realistically, for me, when I look, I think, well, he's done all right, but he's not done fantastic. His dad was a fantastic fighter, and he was trained by a guy called Ronnie Davis, who never trained anybody apart from him. But he was, you know, he was a fantastic trainer for Chris Eubank Senior. So everybody finds at least one champion if you can. But being able to replicate it over and over again. Joe Gallagher, he's had some good champions over the years. Billy Graham never trained anybody apart from Ricky Hatton, like we said. So it's finding that system, what works for you. But then you've got to find the fighter who can work to that system. And that's the difficult part. You know what I mean? You can't always find that fighter. So you'll have successes. I've had more failures than successes, but the successes have been big.
Yeah.
And if I'm having loads of failures and I'm only getting, I'm getting kids getting beaten in British title fights or Commonwealth title fights, well, my failures are they'll get beaten in a world title fight or they'll win a world title fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what it is. The others, it's just a system all the way through. People do get beat at British level and still go on to be better fighters. They can do that. That's down to them. We've had loads of fighters who've been beat at low levels and then gone on to bigger fights. So, but that's not because of me. That's because they've had to adjust. They've had to adjust something.
Now that you've come this far, and you've seen what you've seen, you've experienced all the experiences that you've had, could you imagine doing anything else?
I can imagine not doing this. I can't imagine doing anything else, but I can think to myself, there's going to be a time when I don't want to do it.
Do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's, you know, it's like you said, you're talking about music and being.
Well, I was just going to lead on to it,
Because for me to do stuff, I have to be motivated and interested in doing it. I had a paper around when I think I had a paper around from 12 years old to the day I left school, 16. Yeah. And like I went to work in a factory for 12 months and I just thought, is this what life is? This is not what I want to do. I'd rather do my own thing and, you know, stand or fall by it. And I didn't go straight into boxing. You know, I spent years in a band, playing music, going around clubs, you know, doing that. I taught most of the people in the band how to play. And it financed my lifestyle. I like to train. I didn't really want to go to work. I enjoyed doing that. But I got to a point when I got to about 27. And it's a bit of a watershed age for a lot of people. You look at, they call it the 27 club. Look at the pop stars. They get to 27, you're 3 years away from 30 and you're 7 years away from 20. You start thinking, where's your life going? So for me, I just remember by chance, my dad said, you just have to help us in the gym. We've got so many kids coming through. We can't handle them all. I said, well, turn them away. He went, no, you can't do that. It's the numbers. You got to get the numbers in. Yeah. And there were kids when Naz was at his height. You get everybody coming to the gym from all over the place. Paul Griffin from Ireland, loads of Irish kids from all over the world turning up, wanting to be trained because they all wanted to be, but they don't understand you can't just turn them into a Naseem Hamed. Yeah. But they want to come to the place and they'll either evolve or they'll fall by the wayside. So I got into boxing and started doing it really begrudgingly. Doing it because on Saturday nights I was usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday I was out gigging, and boxing was either Friday or Saturday night. You know what I mean?
Something had to give,
and obviously I lived at home at the time, and I said that's what you've got to do. There's no questions asked. He's like, you know, that's where you live, so you're gonna have to do this. So I did it, and at that time there was Brendan, who was the main trainer, John, who trained the amateurs and worked with Brendan. And I was like just the kid coming in and just taking all the rest of, you know, organising everybody basically. And after time, not that I tried to push myself forward, it's more or less they took a bit of a step back. You know what I mean? And then they send me out. But before I even did boxing, you know, at 27, at 18, I was a border control timekeeper. I did that for 2 or 3 years. And one of the fights I did was Barry McGuigan against Jim McDonald in Manchester. Oh, yeah. And, you know, I did lots of fights. But apart from that, when I was that age, I'd get sent to places like Belgium, Germany, Italy, France, Finland, Denmark, South Africa, just cornering kids, not high-level kids, 50-50s. They might have, 10 wins, 10 losses. So then there was a circuit. And it was quite lucrative. So my dad would train kids and I'd go to South Africa for a week. You bandage them, you corner them. I didn't train them, but I knew enough to get them through a fight. They knew what they were doing. They'd win, they'd lose, and they'd be all over the place. So I was doing all the background stuff because Brendan never wanted to leave the gym. He couldn't leave the gym. He couldn't leave Naseem Hamed for one day or Johnny Nelson or anybody. He had to run because he was a figurehead of that gym. And if he didn't turn up for 2 days, then that gym would be empty because where's Brendan? He's not here. They go.
Wow.
So that's the pull. So he could never leave that place. When we were kids and go on holiday, we never went on holiday with his dad. My mum would take us away, and that would be it. He'd stay in the gym, and that's the dedication that you need because there was the gym was his life. Sunday morning, first thing, not church, gym. Yeah. Saturday morning, kids, 7 days a week. He did it. It's not. I would never do that, but.
How is that as his child? Forget about Dominic Ingle, the boxing coach now, but
because we only lived across the road, so we were great in one sense because my dad, he was across the road and we could get away with more or less anything.
Yeah.
But by the same measure, we'd go in the gym, we'd swing off the bags, we'd get in the ring, we'd sit down watching kids. I never knew how to fight, but I'd watch kids hitting each other and think, oh, right. So the first time I ever got into trouble at school when I was 6 or 7, I knew how to hit somebody, even though I'd never done it because I'd seen people doing it.
Yeah.
So it was normal for us. It was normal. It was a normal life. Why would you be different? But you're a bit different because you're thinking, well, there's 5 of us. All my mates have just got 2 kids. I didn't even know what my dad did. I didn't even know he was a boxer. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it was quite normal. Everything was going on. We had a lot of stuff going on. He'd get on the news or he'd be in the paper. You think, why is he in paper? It's like, it was really...
Did he ever tell you? Did he ever say to you like, "This is what I do," or "This is why I'm in the paper"? I mean,
I can remember one year he boxed. I think I were young. I think we just and my sister, and she was born in 1974, and he'd been retired a few years. And I remember him it was near Christmas time. We went to Copenhagen to box, and he got beat. I think he got knocked out. But we had a good Christmas because we had loads of toys. Do you know what I mean? And,
right. Yeah.
And I don't think it was expected. Like he never is in Catholic families, but. So he had to get some money. And so you just realise that, I just realised then that like something was a bit different. And then as time went on, he was in the gym and we go to the gym and you just think, you don't think anything of it. I think, what's this place? It was a church hall and it was also a boxing club and that's just how it was. That's how our life was. It was already there before we were born. So you go over to the gym and see him. If he was there and you just watch what you're doing, or you'd see some kids and you start playing with the kids, or you just know the characters and you get to know the fighters and you get took everywhere. It's just, that's how your life was. You just accepted it. I didn't ever for 1 minute think, what's this all about? So only when I look back now, when I'm older and think, blooming heck, what a childhood I had, because it was the best one. Yeah. You know what I mean? It wasn't a normal one. We didn't have normal holidays. My dad had got no money. He grafted. He paid all the bills, paid the food. That were it. My mum made us clothes out of stuff. We had hand-me-downs off all Rested family. All Rested family, my mum's brother's family, they were the 2.4 children, standard family. Both parents worked and they'd all got nice houses, like a little semi whatever. We had a big house. My dad knocked it down, built this, everything was done the Irish way, back to front. You know what I mean? It's not, he built an house and then he built it back to front.
Yeah.
And started adding on. So it was interesting. It was an interesting childhood, and I wouldn't change it for the world because we went everywhere. His friends were boxing we remember one time near Christmas, we were all going for a drive, and he took us to somewhere up in the northeast to meet these, this family who went to boxing, and we spent a few days, before Christmas there. And it's only now when I look back, I think it must have been that stressful for my mother. I thought I better take me and my other brother John, because we were an handful. I'll take him out of the equation for a bit. Yeah. And so, you know what I mean? It's only when you have kids yourself, you realise why you're doing it. That's I have to do the same thing. I've only got 3, but when they get on top of each other, you've got to take them out, burn them out. And that's what my dad used to do. He'd take us everywhere, burn us out, bring us back. And it probably gave him a break as well. So you only realise when you look about the things he did when we were kids, why he did it. And that's, you learn that you learn that yourself with your kids. You apply it to people in the gym, because they all most kids in that gym are like your oldest kid. They're spoiled. Yeah. They want everything their own way. The world rolls around them.
So your eldest kid there?
Oh, me?
You just say like your eldest kid?
No, like if you have children, your oldest, because your oldest kid comes along, and for so many years, they have the undivided attention of the parents.
Yes.
And it's like you have apparently there's a middle child syndrome.
Yeah.
And there's the eldest, and there's the only child syndrome. And the only child syndrome, what I've noticed is that they're very good at socialising because they've never known brothers and sisters. So there's been a few in the gym. You see them travelling the world and they make friends very easy and they can drop into any situation. The eldest child tends to want everything. They're a bit spoiled. They get face on. The middle child kind of gets overlooked. I'm the middle child.
I'm the eldest.
So you tend to find that, whether it applies to you or not, is that the way? Do you get the most, I'm the first one along.
I am a brat.
Yeah, so it's usually the first and the last. So if you were the oldest and you've got a really young daughter, young sister, it'd be that competition because you know what I mean. And then the one in the middle gets overlooked. I found my own mischief. I was the one in the middle, middle child him, and I'm a trouble causer because I entertain myself.
Yeah.
And it's only when you get down the line you realise, it's just the way it is. And I had to have a lot of attention. I got a lot of attention off my dad. I had to be controlled a lot and explain a lot of stuff because I would fly off.
Yeah.
But it's all part of the process. It's all part of growing up in it. That's what it is. So you learn about yourself, and then you learn about the kids in the gym. And Brendan used to say, he's got to the point where he used to sit, I don't know if you haven't been to our gym, I don't think, have you?
No, not yet,
and
no.
You walk in our gym, there's a door, and in the back corner where the ring is where Brendan used to sit. And he said, by the time the kid walks through that door and walks to me, I can tell what they're going to be like. Just because there's a roll bags, they might hit the bag, they might look at somebody else, they might, whatever, because you can generally tell what they're going to do. And he'd watch the behaviour, he'd study what they were doing, and half of the time, remember when you were a kid and you think, how does my mum know I've done that? When you're not cleaning your teeth in the morning, or you're skiving school, or you think, how do they know? Because they've done it all themselves.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you can't understand why that is because you don't give your parents that much credit. And it's same with boxers. Brendan would just watch them, how they interact with everybody. And he knew when somebody got a bit of a grudge with each other and they wanted to knock lumps off each other in sport, and he wouldn't do that. He'd put them in with somebody else, and he'd humble them in a different way, not in a bad way.
Yeah.
But he'd do it different. And by the time they got out, they weren't interested in bashing anybody else up because they'd realise what the limitations were. So he'd do it in a crafty way. We never had punch ups in our gym. Open spars, never allowed. Even when other kids come from other gyms, it's not allowed. We don't have people getting knocked out. You see this doghouse in Mayweather, and you see this, well, that's what you've got to do. No, you don't have to do that because we've had a lot of success in boxing. We are having that kind of system in our gym. So it's about pairing people up. It's about learning how that person is and what's going to be the best for him, and not getting the stuffing knocked out of him to put him in the place, or bumping them up that much artificially that when they actually have to go in and do it really, they can't do it.
Yeah,
you've got to do it in a way, and it's, for me, it's second nature, and it doesn't always work. But I ain't got a magic wand I'm going to turn everybody into a fantastic fighter because my ego's not that big, and nobody can. But there's people out there who think that you can, you can't. It's got to be a combination, and usually it's got to be 80 to 90% of the fighter doing it, and it's got to be 100% of the coach paying his attention and saying, you're doing that wrong, just slightly do that, slightly do this. It doesn't always work, but good fighters will make it work.
Wow. Well, we're coming towards the end of our podcast, but I've one last question that I'd like to ask you, and that's, I ask it all the time. How would you like to be remembered?
Before you ask me that question, I'm going to ask you this one. Have I actually answered any questions you've asked me? Have I just elaborated on everything?
You've done more than that. You've done more than that.
Why would I like to be remembered? Do you know what? It's not something I think about, to be honest, at all. It wasn't, I think for my dad, coming from Ireland, big family, to find his fame and fortune, if that's what he did,
absolutely, then
he achieved what he needed to do. For me, it's not that, because I kind of had a, what can I say? I had a good upbringing where he was kind of famous, and we go to school and everybody knew you were, but not for any reason type of thing. It was like, it was a nice place to be as a kid, because Herrol Graham at the time was a big fighter. Then you had the Naz. I was a bit older then, but growing up as a kid, he was in the news, he was in papers, he ran boxing shows in Sheffield. He was a bit of a somebody, but you don't really pay much attention to it because it's just your dad, innit? It's just what you do. And if I can, I don't know, maybe I'm going to be remembered as the son of Brendan Ingle who carried on what he was doing. If I can be remembered as that and did it very well, I'd be happy, because I'm not here to make it better or be better than, because I don't think you can be. You can be something different, and I'm not even going to do it something different, because if I were doing it different, I'd be stopping all what I'm doing and say, this is my gym and I do it this way now and I train a different style. I don't. I'm just continuing what he did. And if we can keep doing that and make him work what he made work, that's good enough for me, because it's just continuing the legacy in it, really.
Absolutely. Were you surprised by the outpouring of love when your dad passed?
Not really, because there were thousands and thousands of people come through that gym, and it's upset me a bit, actually. But yeah. No, I'm not surprised, really.
Because there's been so many, and there still is. And, you know, on his anniversary and his birthday, you know, especially with social media, that's one of the beautiful elements of it, is that we get to see time and time again how special he was and the impact that he made.
Yeah, I think he's just a one-off, weren't he?
Yeah. I didn't mean to upset you.
Yes, isn't it? It's some things you just don't tend to think about, I think, to be honest. Just remember the good times, and that's it.
What would you say is the most important
lesson
that he has instilled in you? Like when you, and not necessarily, you know, to do with boxing, what is the one thing that you carry with you that, you know, you'll say, my dad taught me that?
Just to look after people, basically. That's what it is. In boxing, it's easy to abuse people, and you've got to look at them as your own kids, really. And that's it. So, yeah, you got a good question there, didn't you?
Thank you so much. I did not mean to make you cry. Well, that's a perfect end to our podcast. Thank you very much for coming in. Did you enjoy it?
I did, yes.
Good. Thank you. And thank you for sharing so many stories. It was a true honour. Thank you very much.
And can you just make sure you cut that bit out of me when I start tearing up a bit?
Absolutely not.
It's not good for my image. I like to walk around thinking that I'm the hardest man on the planet and I'm unbreakable.
No, it was a perfect touch. It showed all your different elements, so it was good. But thank you so much for coming in. I really do appreciate it. That was Dominick Ingle for the First Exchange podcast.